The space station was old, broken, and forgotten. Its lights flickered like they were too tired to stay awake. Most people here were smugglers, scavengers, or survivors. No one came to help and no one cared. Silas was one of the oldest humans. Left on the edge of the galaxy, his back hurt every morning, his knees cracked with every step. But he still walked the same path every day, collecting scraps. Metal parts, old wires, broken screens, anything he could sell for a few credits. That day, something strange happened as he passed by an alley between two cargo crates. He heard it, a sound very soft, like someone breathing. Or whimpering. He turned his head, eyebrows low, eyes sharp. Nothing was there, just a big metal trash can. But then, it moved not much, just a slight shift like someone pushed it from inside. Silas stopped, his heart beating a little faster. Another rat. He muttered, but something felt different. He walked closer, one step at a time. The alley was dark, the smell was bad, rotting food and spilled oil. He raised his foot and gently kicked the side of the trash can. No sound, he crouched, placed a shaky hand on the lid. "Let's see what's hiding in here," he whispered. He opened it slowly, carefully, and froze. Inside was a little girl, but not a human girl. She was alien. Her skin was light purple with soft glowing lines. Her eyes were too big for her face, glowing faintly blue. She was curled up like a frightened animal, thin, so thin. He could count her ribs. Her hands were wrapped around her legs. She was shaking. For a moment, neither of them moved. She stared at him, wide-eyed, terrified. He stared back, unsure what to do. Then, slowly, she reached into her pocket and pulled out something, a small piece of bread, dry, moldy, half-eaten. She held it out to him with both hands, like an offering. Silas's chest tightened, she thought. He was here to take her food. She was trying to share it. Maybe so he wouldn't hurt her. "No," he said softly. "No, little one. I'm not here to steal." He knelt beside the can and looked around. No one was watching, no cameras, no guards, just silence. He took off his old coat and held it out. The girl didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on his, full of fear, full of sadness. "It's cold," he said. "Come on, I'll get you out of here." She didn't understand his words, but maybe she felt his tone. After a few seconds, she slowly reached out. Her small purple fingers touched his hand, shaking. He wrapped his coat around her and lifted her out carefully. She was lighter than he expected, too light like she hadn't eaten in days. She didn't fight, didn't cry, just rested her head on his shoulder as he carried her away. He felt her tiny fingers clutch his shirt. Silas walked fast, back to his ship. A rusty cargo hauler docked at the far end. Along the way, people glanced at him, but no one said anything. He reached his door, opened it, stepped inside. The warmth of the heater greeted them. He laid her gently on an old couch, looked around with wide, unsure eyes, still silent. Still afraid, Silas walked to the tiny kitchen and pulled out a sealed meal pack. He opened it, heated it, and placed it in front of her. The smell of real food filled the air. Rice, soft vegetables, warm gravy. The girl stared at it like it was a dream, but she didn't move. "Eat," Silas said, pointing. "It's okay." She waited a second longer, then crawled forward slowly. She picked up the spoon like she had never used one before and began to eat, fast at first, then slower, like she wanted to make it last. Silas sat back and watched her. Who was she? Where were her parents? Why was she alone in the trash? Questions circled his mind, but one thing was clear. No child, human or alien, should ever be found like that. As she finished the food and curled up on the couch, Silas pulled a blanket over her small frame. She looked up at him with sleepy eyes and gave him a weak smile. He smiled back and whispered, "You're safe now, and for the first time in years." The old man didn't feel so alone. The ship was quiet. Old metal walls hummed gently with the sound of power flowing. Silas sat in his chair, tired but alert. He kept glancing at the little alien girl sleeping on his couch, wrapped in a blanket. She looked peaceful now. Her breathing was soft, Her small purple hands were holding the edge of the blanket tightly. She hadn't said a word since he brought her in, but Silas wasn't worried about that. He knew pain like hers didn't. Speak easily. Hours passed, and the heater made the room warm and cozy. Silas stood up, walked to the storage room, and pulled out an old pillow and folded mattress. He dusted it off, placed it in the corner where she could see it. Then carefully made a small bed, soft and simple. When she woke up, her eyes moved. Slowly, looking around the ship, she didn't sit up, didn't cry. She just watched everything. The light on the ceiling, the glowing buttons, the empty plates. Then her eyes found Silas. He smiled and pointed to the corner where the small bed now waited. "You don't have to sleep on the couch every night?" he said gently. She didn't move. Silas walked over and sat beside her, keeping his voice calm. "This is your home. Now, all right?" he said. "You don't have to be scared." She stared at him, then looked at the bed. Slowly, she stood up. Her steps were unsure. Her legs weak, she walked over to the mattress and stared down at it like it was something strange. And then, she did something unexpected. She sat beside the bed, not on it. Then she crawled under the mattress and lay flat on the cold floor beneath. Silas froze. He didn't know what to say. She thought the underneath of the bed was where she belonged. She curled up into a ball again, like she had inside the trash can. Her body shook slightly, not from cold, but from habit. She didn't trust soft things, didn't believe in comfort. Silas knelt beside her. "Hey, no, little one," he said softly. He gently touched the mattress and then pointed to it again. "This is for you to sleep on, not under." She peeked out. Confused, he patted the top of the bed, smiled, and then slowly lay down on it himself. His body creaked, his joints popped, but he didn't care. "See?" He chuckled. "Not bad." She blinked, then slowly crawled out from under the bed. She looked at him, then looked at the mattress again. Carefully, she put one hand on it, then the other. She pressed down, feeling the softness, testing it. Then carefully she lay beside him. Silas didn't move, just watched her quietly. She didn't close her eyes. Instead, she lay there staring up at the ceiling, her body stiff like stone. After a few minutes, she sat up and looked at Silas again. She pointed at herself, then pointed at the bed. Her eyes asked a question without using words. "Yes," he said. "It's yours." Something changed in her expression. Not a smile, but something close. She lay down again, and this time, she pulled the blanket over herself. She didn't curl up, didn't hide. She simply closed her eyes and let the bed hold her. Silas sat up slowly, stood, and turned off the lights. Watched her in the soft blue glow of the ship's control panels. She looked even smaller in the dark, but somehow stronger too. That night, she didn't wake up screaming. She didn't sleep under furniture or keep food in her hands. She just slept. Silas didn't go to his own room. He sat on the floor nearby, in case she needed him. He leaned against the wall and whispered, "You're doing fine, little star." He didn't know her name yet, didn't know where she came from or what horrors she had seen. But she was here now, and she was safe, and maybe, just maybe, tonight was the first real night of her life. The days passed slowly inside the old cargo ship. Silas didn't ask questions, and the little alien girl didn't give answers. She still hadn't spoken a single word. But something else was happening, something deeper. They were learning to understand each other, not through words, but through actions. Through the way she looked at him when he brought her food, through the soft, shy smiles she gave when he fixed the heater so her corner stayed warm. Silas noticed that she didn't like loud noises. She would cover her ears and curl up whenever the station alarms buzzed. She didn't like sharp lights either, so he replaced the bulbs near her bed with dim, gentle ones like the stars she used to see. Maybe one morning, Silas was making breakfast, reheated synth bread and thick space stew. He turned to find her standing near the table, watching quietly, without a word. She pointed to the bread. Then, she pointed to herself. Then, with two hands, she pushed the bread toward him and tilted her head. Silas blinked. She wanted to share. He smiled, broke the bread into two halves, and handed her one. She took it gently and nodded. and sat beside him. That was the first time they ate together, not just her being fed, but sharing later that day. Silas found her drawing something on the ship wall with a piece of old charcoal. He walked over and saw it, two stick figures, one tall and one small. The tall one had a beard. The small one had glowing blue eyes. They were holding hands. Silas felt something in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. He swallowed hard and whispered, "That's me, huh?" The girl turned and gave him a look that said, "Of course." She didn't need to say anything. He understood her. Silas realized they had made a new language. Smiles meant "I trust you." Bread meant "thank you." A shared drawing meant "you're my family now." One evening, while fixing an old battery module, Silas dropped a sharp metal piece. It sliced his palm. Blood oozed out slowly. He winced and held it, muttering under his breath. The girl rushed over, silent, wide-eyed. She looked at his hand, then looked into his face. She didn't cry or scream. Instead, she gently took his hand in hers and leaned forward, her glowing blue veins lit up under her skin. She touched her forehead to his injured palm. Faint shimmer passed between them, warm and soft like a pulse of light. And then the pain faded. The wound was still there, but it didn't hurt as much. Silas stared at her, stunned. "You're something special, aren't you?" he whispered. She didn't answer, just gave him a small smile. The kind that said, "You would have done the same for me." That night, Silas couldn't sleep. He sat by the small window, looking out at the stars. He thought of all the times he had been alone, of the years he spent walking through junk, speaking to no one now. His ship wasn't quiet anymore. It had footsteps, soft giggles, and drawings on the wall. It had her. He decided to name her. He couldn't keep calling her girl forever. She needed a name, something bright, something soft, something hers. The next morning, he handed her a tiny necklace he made from broken wires and shiny metal scrap. On the back, he had scratched one word: Luma. She tilted her head, confused. "Luma," Silas said, pointing to her. "That's you, little star." She looked at the necklace, then at him. Then slowly, gently, she placed it around her neck. She touched it like it was precious, and then, for the first time ever, "Ma," her voice was soft, broken, unsure, but it was hers. Silas smiled with tears in his eyes and whispered, "Yes, little one. That's your name." In that moment, the silence between them broke, and the bond they had built from nothing but bread, smiles, and gentle hands became unbreakable. Asterisk, the ship's air was warm that morning. Luma had drawn stars on the control panel with a dry marker. She laughed, a real laugh, soft like wind chimes. Lee smiled as he watched her spin in circles, holding her little necklace. "Careful," he chuckled, tightening a bolt under the control screen. "You'll fall." She didn't understand every word, but she understood him. She pointed at one of her stars and said clearly, "Luma." Silas nodded. "Yes, that one's you, shining bright." Then came the knock, a cold, sharp knock at the outer ship door. Not the kind of knock friends give. It was hard, official, and unwanted. Silas's smile faded. He stood up slowly, his body tensing. Luma froze where she stood, her glowing eyes wide. The knock came again, louder this time. Silas moved to the door and pressed the screen. A grainy image appeared to people in gray uniforms with glowing badges. Intergalactic Child Authority. His stomach dropped. He opened the door just a little. "Yes?" he asked, trying to sound calm. The taller officer, a woman with pale skin and silver hair, stepped forward. "We've received a report of an undocumented alien miner aboard this vessel," she said. Her tone was sharp, not angry, just official. Cold Silas didn't answer right away. Behind him, he could feel Luma standing quietly, her small hand gripping the back of his shirt. She didn't know what was happening, but she knew she didn't want them to take her. "We're here to verify and collect," the officer continued, "for transport to the Central Refugee Holding System." Silas took a breath. "She's not a stray animal," he said softly. "She's a child, and she's safe here. She's undocumented," the officer replied, "under Regulation 12A. Any alien miner without proper guardianship must be processed." "And what happens after that?" Silas asked. The man behind her answered, "Study camps, DNA tracing, Re-education protocols. While Silas's eyes narrowed. Sounds like a prison with nicer words. The woman stepped closer. We don't want trouble, she said. Just hand her over. She'll be cared for. Behind Silas, Luma trembled. Then, with a spark of panic, she reached out and grabbed his hand. Her small fingers shook as she clung to him. She pulled herself behind his legs and crouched, hiding. Her eyes were wide, shining with fear. The officer noticed it and softened slightly. She doesn't understand what's happening, she said. Silas's voice came out steady and firm. No, but she understands what fear feels like, and that's enough. The man took a step forward. Don't make this difficult, but... Silas didn't move. He stood tall, arms out slightly, like a wall between them and her. She sleeps in a bed now, he said. She laughs. She draws stars. She heals. And for the first time she has a name. The woman looked past him at the small figure clinging to his coat. She needs education, care, structure. She needs love, Silas interrupted. She's not a problem to fix. She's a child who needs to be wanted. There was a long silence. Then the woman tapped her device and looked at Silas. One more time, you've been warned, she said. If you don't report her officially within 72 hours, you'll be marked for harboring, and just like that, they turned and walked away. The door hissed shut. Silence returned. Silas turned slowly and knelt down to Luma. She didn't speak, but her eyes were full of questions. He brushed her hair back gently and smiled. Don't worry, he said. I won't let them take you. Luma stared into his eyes, then placed both her tiny hands on his face. She didn't cry. She just looked at him with a kind of trust so deep it made Silas' heart ache. That night, she didn't draw stars. She sat beside Silas and held on to his sleeve as he read from an old data screen. He didn't say it aloud, but he was making plans. He knew the authorities would return, and next time they might not knock so politely. She looked up at him, then slowly rested her head on his shoulder. He kissed the top of her head and whispered, "Even if I have to run across galaxies, you're my girl now." The ship was silent again, but this silence felt different, heavier. Luma hadn't smiled in 2 days. She didn't draw on the walls, didn't hum her little melodies, Silas noticed. He tried to cheer her up with warm food, stories from his youth, even an old music chip. But Luma just sat on the floor near the heater, hugging her knees. She didn't cry, but her eyes looked far away as if she was waiting for something bad to happen. Silas understood that feeling. He had lived with it most of his life. The fear that one day the peace would break, that someone would take away the only thing that mattered. That night, Silas stayed up late fixing the outer stabilizer. Luma had fallen asleep in her corner, clutching her blanket and her necklace. The ship lights were dimmed to a soft blue. Everything was quiet until it wasn't. Bang. A loud crash hit the hull. Then another. Silas jumped up and ran to the cockpit. Through the outer camera, he saw 2 shadowy figures climbing onto the ship's hull. Unauthorized scavengers, maybe bounty hunters. Maybe worse, someone had tipped them off. Silas rushed back to Luma and whispered, "Wake up, Starshine. We've got trouble." She blinked slowly, confused and half asleep. He scooped her up and moved toward the hidden panel near the engine room. It led to a small crawl space, cramped, dark, but safe. He placed her inside and whispered, "No matter what happens, don't come out." Luma's eyes widened. Her breath quickened. She shook her head. Her hands clutching his sleeve, he touched her cheek and forced a smile. "Trust me," he whispered. "I'll be right back." He closed the panel just as the intruders broke through the cargo door. 2 tall men in dark armor entered with electric blades and scanner eyes. "We know she's here, old man," one growled. "Step aside and no one gets hurt." Silas stood firm, hands up, but eyes fierce. "She's just a child," he said. "She's not going anywhere with you." The second man raised his blade. "Then you die with her, but before." The blade struck. The ship itself began to shake. Lights flickered. Metal creaked. And then came the sound. A soft hum, like wind inside a dream. Then brighter glowing pulses of light leaked from the panel behind them. Suddenly it burst open. Luma stood there, eyes glowing like two stars. Her hair floated around her as if underwater. Blue and silver lines ran under her skin, pulsing like living fire. The men turned, surprised too late. A wave of invisible energy exploded from her. It hit them like a storm. Throwing both intruders against the wall with a crash, their weapons flew from their hands, shattering on impact. Silas stumbled backward, stunned. Luma hovered a few inches above the floor, arms spread, but she wasn't angry. She looked scared. Her eyes found Silas. They glowed bright at first, but the moment they met his, they dimmed. She dropped to the floor and ran into his arms. Silas caught her, holding her close as her body shook. He could feel the heat of her power fading. Into nothing, she buried her face in his chest and cried, real tears this time. Silas didn't say a word. He just held her, rocking back and forth, like a father holding his frightened daughter. Behind them, the two intruders moaned and crawled. Out of the ship, terrified, they would tell others of a girl with light under her skin, a girl who wasn't just special, but dangerous later, when the ship was locked down again. Silas sat with Luma near the heater. He handed her a cup of warm broth. She held it with both hands and looked down, ashamed. You're not a monster, Silas said softly. She didn't. Look up. He placed his hand under her chin and gently raised it. You saved me, he whispered. You protected this ship. Our home. Luma's lips trembled. Then she spoke one word. Sorry. Silas shook his head. Don't ever be sorry for who you are. He smiled gently. You don't have to be afraid of your light, Luma. Then he pointed to her heart. Because it shines from here. She placed her little hand over his and finally gave him a full smile. Not a small one, not a shy one, a real, glowing, tearful smile. Asterisk, the next morning, the ship was quiet again. The silence was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that came after a storm, when the winds are gone but the damage is still there. Luma sat by the window, holding her necklace, her eyes followed the stars slowly drifting outside. She hadn't said much since the attack. Silas watched her from across the room. His mind was full of questions. Where did that power come from? Who exactly was she? And most of all, why was she hiding in a trash can when he found her? He needed answers, not just to protect her, but to understand her. Silas stood up and walked to his locked cabinet. He pulled out a dusty box full of old data chips and scavenged memory cores over the years. He had collected scraps from abandoned ships. Most were worthless, but some held secrets. He spent hours sorting through them, plugging each chip into the ship's reader, scanning for anything unusual. He was about to give up when a corrupted core suddenly blinked to life. It showed a hologram, blurry, flickering, but real. A scientist in white robes stood over a glowing pod. Inside was a small figure with skin like violet pearl. In glowing blue veins, Silas leaned forward, eyes wide. The voice of the scientist echoed through the ship's speakers. Project Luma, final survivor of the Lyran royal bloodline. The child possesses latent neurolight abilities uncontrolled. Energy released during emotional stress. She is the last of her kind. Marked for elimination by Central Command due to the threat of ancient inheritance. The recording ended. Silas sat back, his heart racing. Royal bloodline. Targeted for extinction. Power hidden inside her since birth. He turned to Luma, who was now watching him silently from across the room. He didn't know how long she had been listening. Silas stood slowly, walked over, and sat beside her. He took a deep breath, then gently held her hand. You knew, didn't you? Softly, Luma didn't speak, but her silence said enough. You were running, Silas continued. Hiding. She nodded once, slowly. And those people. The ones who left you. They were trying to erase you. She looked down, gripping the necklace tighter. A tear slipped down her cheek, not from fear, but shame. Silas shook his head. No, little one. Listen to me. He took both. Her hands in his, firm but gentle. You're not cursed, he said. You're not a danger. You're rare. You're powerful. And your precious. Luma's lips trembled. She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. I break things, she said slowly. I make people. Scared, Silas smiled, brushing a tear from her cheek. "No," he said. "You make me brave." He stood up and walked to the console, started typing fast-loading maps, searching safe zones, checking fuel levels. Out. Luma stood beside him, watching curiously. "We can't stay here," Silas said. "They'll come. Again, and next time they won't knock." Luma tilted her head. "Where go?" she asked in her quiet voice. Silas turned and grinned. "Someplace warm," he said. "Someplace where the stars don't belong to kings and soldiers, but to kids like you." Luma didn't fully understand, but she reached up and touched his chest, just over his heart, and softly said, "Home." Silas looked at her, stunned. She had never said that word before. He swallowed the lump in his throat and nodded. "Yes," he whispered, "home," that night. While Silas prepared the ship for takeoff, Luma found the old music chip again. She placed it into the console and let the soft melody play. She sat on the floor with a small piece of paper and crayons. She began to draw again, this time not stars. She drew a large figure and a small one, walking hand in hand. Above them, she drew a glowing sun. And under them, she wrote one word. In shaky letters, Family Silas didn't see it until later that night. When he did, he just stared at it. For a very long time, then he turned off the lights and whispered into the darkness. "They can chase us across galaxies, but they'll never take her again." The stars moved faster than ever. Silas's ship tore through space, its engine howling like an old beast refusing to die. In the back room, Luma sat near the window, her little fingers tracing star trails on the glass. She looked calm, but her glowing eyes told another story. She felt it. They were coming. Silas sat at the pilot's seat, hands tight on the controls. Warning lights blinked red. Fuel low, nav system half working, but he wasn't turning back. Not now. Not after all they'd been through. Suddenly, a loud ping. Dozens of red markers appeared on the screen, ships surrounding them, closing in from all sides. Central Command had found them. "Here we go," Silas muttered, switching to manual. Then he heard soft footsteps behind him. Luma stood in the doorway, her small body calm, but her eyes glowing like fire. "They found us," she whispered. Silas nodded. "Yeah, I see them." Luma stepped closer. "They want me," she said. "Quietly, but they can't have you," Silas said, louder this time. "You're going to have to fly through me first." Then a voice echoed across their ship, broadcasted from the lead enemy vessel. "This is Commander Threx of Central Command," the voice growled. "Surrender the Lyran girl, and your life will be spared." Luma didn't flinch. Silas turned off the speaker and stood, looked at Luma and said, "I promised I'd protect." "You and I meant it." But Luma shook her head. This time, she whispered, "I protect you." Before Silas could stop her, Luma walked to the center of the ship. She closed her eyes, lifted her arms, and then her entire body began to glow. Not just her eyes or skin, her spirit. The light pulsed outward, reaching the walls of the ship. Touching every circuit, every panel, the ship's broken systems flickered back to life. The engine stopped shaking. The ship stopped running. It stood. Ready then, without touching a button. Luma opened a direct communication line to every ship nearby, to every listening station, every planet relay, every channel in range. And she spoke. Her voice was soft, gentle, but it filled the galaxy. "My name is Luma," she said. "I was thrown away because I was different. I was hunted because I was born from a bloodline you feared. But one man, one human, didn't see me as dangerous." She looked into the main camera now, tears in her eyes, but her voice steady. "He found me in a trash can and gave me his coat. He gave me food when I had none. He gave me a name. Called me family." Silas watched from behind her, his hands trembling. Not from fear, but from something deeper, something proud. Luma took a breath. "And even though I have powers you don't understand, I'm still just a child." She looked behind her at Silas and smiled through tears. "And that man, the one you call criminal, the one you chase, he is not my captor." She placed her hand on her chest. "He is my father." The entire galaxy went silent. Every ship, every soldier, every viewer. Every stranger across the stars, they watched. No one moved. No one spoke. Then one by. One, ships powered down their weapons. Some turned and flew away. Others just waited, like they didn't know what to do anymore. Central Command couldn't erase what she just said because billions had already heard it. And in their hearts they believed her inside the ship. Silas wiped his eyes. He had no words. Only emotion. Luma turned and walked toward him. He knelt down as she reached him. Wait. And without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around him and whispered, "I choose you, Papa." He held her tight, his old hands trembling. "I choose you too, Starshine," he whispered back. From that day forward, Luma and Silas were never hunted again. They became a symbol across the galaxy, a symbol of hope, of family, of love that had no species, no language, no blood, only heart. And in the stars, where kings once ruled and empires burned, the galaxy whispered a new story of a little alien girl who called a human father and changed everything.